You are about to experience the Core Academy podcast. Welcome to the flow. All right. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Moshe Berserker. I'm sitting here with Brandon Durham and Josh Skyer. This is a pretty special occasion for me. I've been training on and off for the past 13 years, and it started with Josh, and then Brandon has taken over, and I've periodically checked in with Josh throughout the years. And I wanted to bring these guys together and share some anecdotes, some stories about their experiences coming up in this art form, and ask them some deep questions about philosophies and life and Jiu-Jitsu. So
let's go.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay.
The show.
So I'll tell you a quick story about Josh real quick, and then you can take over from there. So
good story's positive, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to keep it positive today?
Don't incriminate me.
So this was dating back to the early 2000s, I believe. Do you remember what year you started training?
I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically.
Yes.
I think 2004.
That's what I was going to say.
Introduced to it by someone I was working with, not really formally. We just had like a room in the back of a gym with which he would strangle me.
And at the time, you had started the Park Slope Fitness Collective in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, we had opened up our first, it was just a boutique personal training studio. I was kickboxing and teaching a lot of people kickboxing privately.
Right. So at this place, we were training a lot of Muay Thai at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
primarily, yeah.
And that was my introduction to martial arts. And we would train, and then we would often go out for dinner afterwards. And I remember one day, everyone left, and I was in there with Josh. And Josh goes, "Hold on a second. I need your help." And so we started laying out mats in the middle of the room. And I was like, "What are we doing?" He's like, I gotta try some stuff. And I was like, "Okay." So I went along. Do you remember this? And he goes, "Okay, get on your knees." And before I knew it, he had wrapped me up in guard, and you were, I believe, if memory serves, you were drilling the armbar drill from guard, and you were using me like a dummy for jiu-jitsu, a dummy, because I had never seen this sort of movement before, and we've been training Muay Thai.
The ultimate bait and switch. That was a beautiful setup.
Yeah.
Setup.
So
I just need to borrow you for just a second.
Yeah.
So move some boxes. Yeah.
Right. So then I was like, okay, this is interesting. And you went off and carried on, and I focused on my Muay Thai.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that kind of was my introduction to it too. At the time, I don't even remember exactly what year it was, but before then, the manager of the gym was like, I see you like martial arts, you like kickboxing. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm obsessed. He goes, come back here. Let me show you something. And the old, just sit down. Just like Chris Hansen, just have a seat. And I was like, oh, okay. What's going on? Within a second, he was on my neck, choking me. He goes, isn't it incredible how, like, if I just add a little bit of pressure, and I'm like,
Did he teach you to tap first?
No, not at all. Not at all. Needless to say, it was incredible. And for about 2 weeks after, I don't know if people realize, you could actually bruise your Adam's apple. And I had this like deep bruise in my throat, which was a nice reminder of exactly how awesome it was.
We call it the Froggy from Little Rascals.
Yeah, with a bruised internal throat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is incredible. You got to show me more. And it was born from there.
Yeah.
It was on.
Yeah, I remember you fairly quickly. You dove into it head first.
Yeah.
And it captured your attention. And where was the first place that you trained exactly?
So after I decided that maybe just having my manager where I work just strangle me just endlessly after our shifts.
Now, Josh, was he a black belt?
He was a purple belt at the time.
At the time, like a black belt.
I mean, at that time, even a blue belt, like a blue belt walked into the room and it was like God had just entered. Like people were, oh, he's here. Everyone looked down like, oh, we want to train. So he was a purple belt at the time, I believe, under one of the Machados. And, I decided that I would pursue it a little bit more officially. A school, a teacher. So I did a little bit of research, and I was actually at kickboxing one day, and I was in the shower. It's a funny story. I was in the shower, just an awesome class, and I hear two people talking from outside the shower. I don't know if they knew I was in there or not, but they were like whispering to each other about this new jiu-jitsu school that opened in Brooklyn. And the one guy was like, Brooklyn? Nobody does jiu-jitsu in Brooklyn. No. He's like, no, really, it's in Brooklyn. And he was like, what part? Like downtown Brooklyn? He was like, no, Diker Heights. And the one guy was like, I don't even know if that's a real neighborhood, Diker Heights. I was like, no, sir. And again, did a little bit of research, had to ask a few people. There wasn't really YouTube or very much internet, or it was very word of mouth back then. Yeah, it was just because for lack of means, right? And I wound up walking into Brooklyn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was the very first location. It was within the very first group of students there, which was at 7603 13th Avenue in Diker Heights. Pretty legendary place.
That's amazing. 2004?
At this point, I think it was a 2005. It's like right after the new year.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember how many beatings you took that you loved. You would go there and you would be like, man, I just did 2 hours. I got tuned up. It was amazing. I don't know. I got to figure this out. And you just kept going and you kept trying to get me in. And I was, to be honest with you, it looked really intimidating at the time. And I was so focused.
Really intimidating now.
Yeah. Different perspectives. I was so focused on Muay Thai and finally, you got me hooked. And it was right around the time when I had moved to Westchester County and started training with my man here, Brandon Durham.
I was so excited when you told me that you found a place, and I remember it was a great conversation.
Yeah. So Brandon, we're gonna try and keep this kind of chronological theme going here.
Tie it all together.
Yeah. So 2005 for you, I think. In the previous podcast, we had mentioned that it was about that time when you had also been introduced to Jiu-Jitsu.
2002,
excuse me. So, briefly, can you? I love to hear
little rehash.
Yeah, I know this, but Josh doesn't, and there's a lot of other people that are probably going to hear this that want to know too.
My introduction to Jiu-Jitsu is completely different. I saw a magazine, like an industry trade magazine, that popped up on our front desk. I had a picture of like a purple belt that was also a black belt in Taekwondo that had academy down in Florida, standing next to Hoist Gracie. Said the Hoist Gracie network is now expanding in the States and blah blah blah. So called the number, set up a seminar. They sent up a blue belt who happened to be Hoist's manager at the time. We had a seminar. I don't know, maybe 20 students on the mat. Everyone was interested, and we were doing our version of MMA that was a mixture of our, my Thai boxing experience and Kung Fu and some, Chinese wrestling and this and that, and putting things together. So the blue belt came up. We had like a 40-minute match because, after the seminar was over, we went through all the basics. He said, everyone partner up. I partnered up with him, and we went at for 40 minutes and came to a draw. And he was like, hey, man, I think you're going to be pretty good at this. So that was my introduction to Jiu-Jitsu. It wasn't through Hoist. It was through like I said, one of the blue belts, his manager. And that was, I want to say that was May or June of 2002. And then in August, a couple months later, I flew to Japan for Hoist's fight. I became good friends with his manager. He invited me out for Hoist's fight camp. Hoist was fighting Yoshida and Pride. So I flew out to Japan, went to meet my buddy, my buddy wound up not going because his visa had an issue. So I'm in Japan by myself, knowing nobody. I met Hoist there, went up, introduced myself, said, hey, I'm your New York guy in Westchester. And he's like, hey, nice to meet you, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, do I call you professor? Do I call you sensei? He was like, just call me Hoist. And I was like, I can't do that, man. I'm from the Kung Fu tradition, bowing and, old traditional martial artists, And he was like, well, if you don't call me Hoist, I may not answer. And I was like, all right, got it. Hoist it is.
So at that point, you would travel with Hoist, train with Hoist, study with him and other people affiliated with Hoist.
The Hoist Gracie Network, Rodrigo, Holker, my God, who else came through? Rob Kahn, Buddy Clinton. I had a chance to train with Hoyler. I met Henzo in Japan because he was there in Hoist's corner. It was great. It was It was a surreal experience, man. I was on the elevator in the Tokyo Hilton, like with like Bob Sapp, Maurice Smith, Vanderlei Silva walking by, Yakuza everywhere. Like it was pretty crazy. And I was a white belt.
Yeah. Got to start somewhere.
I was a white belt, and I'm sporting my Gracie Team Gracie, T-shirt.
Amazing.
You're on the team. That's it. You're in Japan. You're in the elevator. You're on the team.
Yeah.
So, Josh, when you walked into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, describe the feeling, the experience. Who did you meet the first time? Who's your first class there?
So, my first lesson there was done by Professor Brian Glick. Right off the bat, he was a purple belt at the time, and within 10 minutes, your typical introductory lesson. Within 10 minutes, I was in a uniform. I was a Polaroid was up on the wall. It was a very classic martial arts kind of beginning from the
introduction.
Place.
Right?
Introduction.
Yeah.
The school was founded by Shihan Jin Dun and Professor Brian Glick, who are my professors. I don't like saying my professors. I don't own them. There are a lot of people's professors, but they are the professors. And yeah, within a couple minutes, I was on my back learning about the guard, and it was a little bit more formal than just having my manager say, all right, just put your hands up and let me, strangle you. And I was hooked, and I was just drawn. And my first class there, it was a little bit less structured as it is now. As the school evolved, as I think Jiu-Jitsu evolved, the school, we added a little bit more structure, right? Shihan Dun, I'm sure everybody knows, is a pretty old school karate instructor, student, practitioner. He's been doing it for many, many years. So his position, I think, in those days was to structure it a little bit more formally than most jiu-jitsu programs. So we were bowing, we were lining up, which was different from what I expected in a jiu-jitsu program. And it was just on. I feel like for the first 6 or 7 years, I didn't miss a night. I would have anxiety if I missed one class.
I know that
the
feeling.
FOMO of just one class. So I didn't. And 6, 7 by year like 7 or 8, I think I was all right. Like I'll be back on Monday.
So I want to ask first. While I have Josh here, I want to ask you this question, and then I'll ask the same question to Brandon. So you've both been training for 2 decades, give or take. Was there a period in your training that you were most excited or passionate by? Was there a period of time where there was something happening in your training, in your practice, that you really it changed you? It changed you maybe as a practitioner, as a person, as a teacher, or was there a moment that you can think back that really kind of was your pinnacle?
Me, Brandon?
Yeah. We'll start with
one particular moment. I think my first class after Hurricane Sandy.
Wow.
I had, like most people where I live, like our worlds were upside down.
Okay,
Everything we
so
knew.
Hurricane Sandy were about
2010 or 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at this point, just out of curiosity, what rank had you accomplished or achieved around this point?
I think purple belt.
Okay.
Brown belt. I don't fully remember.
That's okay.
I do remember finding my belt and my gi about a half a block away from
Oh, you guys
my
got
house. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So just
Wow.
so everyone knows, Josh lives and has
on the
grown
coast.
up in Rockaway, New York.
Yeah. So
hit? That's real.
it was real.
Yeah.
My car was about a block away, and all the stuff in the car was like scattered. So it must have been doing. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I remember walking up the street and being like, "Oh my god, somebody lost their belt and their gi. I gotta get that. I gotta get this back to this person. Oh shit, that's mine." It was
never occurred to you that it could be yours, right?
I was like, it's in the car. Where if I find the car, I find the belt. You know. At that time, I was like, if I lose a belt, that's it. I gotta start over. Like, that's it. I lose all the knowledge. Like, the belt
All
is
the
the belt.
mojo's in the belt.
Yeah,
man.
and Hurricane Sandy, people are like dying. I'm like, what about my stripes?
Are you one of those guys that believes you don't wash your belt?
Now I do wash my belt, just not often.
Okay. All
Only
right.
when it needs to be washed.
Me too.
Not every day, but but yeah, I think my first class after that experience, because when you lose like a sense of security, like everything I had known from the moment I was born, like safety, home, like family, it was all just questioned. Like we didn't know, like are we all just gonna have to leave? Is this whole island sinking? Like is this gonna keep happening? Everything's up in the air? And I just very clearly remembered, not to mention at that time, I actually believe it was a brown belt. I had recently signed a lease to opening my own jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's
academy.
right.
Yeah. But putting that gi back on and walking back in there right after that event, it was like it's like when everything else had gone to shit, it was the only thing in that moment that felt like it hadn't. Now, I don't know if that was a reality, but that's how it felt. And it's like, oh yeah, I can do a break fall. Oh, like,
because you have security.
yeah, like that
your
traumatic
jiu-jitsu.
event, like
Yeah.
you question everything. Like,
Right.
oh yeah, I could still do the arm. I was doing it a day before the
Well, 'cause
storm.
you can't control any other stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
And it was in that moment I was like, wow, like, and this is, I tell people all the time, like jiu-jitsu it'll show itself in your life at times where you least expect it. And it's not always like the bad guy jumps out from behind the tree and attacks you. In fact, for most people, it's not. It's completely different. It's in times of crisis. It's when we need that like emotional and physical like stability, and that's when it's there.
That's amazing, and I couldn't agree more.
Bro, we talked about this last week.
We did.
Yeah.
Remind me.
You asked me about how jiu-jitsu has changed your life.
Oh,
right. And with Josh's experience with Sandy, mine was COVID.
Yeah.
Because the school got shut down.
We got tested again.
New York got shut down. Everyone's fears just came to like the forefront in reality, and jiu-jitsu is something that you cannot do within distance. You have to connect with people, right? You have to share that space, which is one of the reasons why we connect so well when we train with our people, our crew, our culture, right? Our students, our partners. And COVID was that for me because I don't know, Josh, were you teaching martial arts professionally when you started doing jiu-jitsu, or were you doing something else?
Yes, I was.
You were?
I was teaching kickboxing professionally.
Okay.
And training like a fiend. So
That's right, because you had the collective that you had.
yeah,
started, right?
I had been training at the time in Manhattan under a guy named Phil Nurse, who was like a pretty epic kickboxer
Yeah,
that
everyone
day.
knows who Phil Nurse is.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So when
Sorry. So you're kind of in that moment in your jiu-jitsu right now.
Because what I was going to say, the way I was going to try and like tie it together is for me, when I started jujitsu to have in the school because I knew teaching kung fu and kickboxing and the whole my first exposure to jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu was the UFC. Was watching Hoist Gracie do his thing in '93, and I was sitting there with my kung fu teacher at the time, and I was like, I said to myself, of course, I want to train with that guy, I want to meet that guy, I want to train that guy, I want to learn that system, that style. And 10 years later, I'm in Japan and I'm meeting Hoist, like
Incredible.
my idol. And
that is an incredible start. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like peaked day one, like in Japan with Hoist Gracie. Like,
Right.
How does it go on from there? But it does.
Story of my life.
It does. It sure does.
Yeah, my first MMA experience and show was in the Tokyo Dome, I believe it was. Yeah, and it was 70,000 people. And that was the fight when Bob Sapp slammed Nogueira.
Oh my God!
Nogueira came out of it and then arm bars him at the end. And I'm a white belt watching this, and I'm like, yes, I chose right art. Yes, I'm gonna learn this. It was just so crazy. The story I was able to come back with and the experience there. That really. But my point is, like, I never thought about not doing jiu-jitsu because, like, I put it on my schedule. I committed to it. I put it out there. And I was just doing it and going along with the ride and the journey and learning it. And after COVID hit and being shut down, just like when you found your gi and your belt out there and you felt like comfort in your jiu-jitsu and the confidence, and you had something that you could fall back on, something that is a useful tool, not just for you, but for other people that you connect with and that you surround. That was it for me, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know when we'd be able to train again. And to me, training has become such a part of my life and my everyday existence. Not having it, not being able to do it, changed me in this last year and a half. And now I'm back, but I'm better because I've been through it more than once. We've moved schools several times. This to me now is like the COVID didn't just shut me down. We relocated. We're rebuilding. And having Moshe back on the mat and like starting the Corecast podcast, and then being able to hook up with you and meeting you after. Dude, I hear your name every time I talk to Moshe. Every time.
Same.
Like every time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we don't ever
Same.
have a conversation, because every conversation goes back into jiu-jitsu somehow.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
especially
that was great.
when you're around, people who practice the same
You always
art.
lead
Yeah.
back to the mat.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
feel like I know you, man.
I feel the same way, and like I tell you, like, just watching, even watching Moshe come back after that injury, where as instructors we both know most people don't.
Yes.
Most people would tear an ACL, they'd think they'd come back and they'd want to come back, and they might even come back for a week or two or a month, but they never actually recover from it. And it's a slippery slope out the door. And to see you almost embrace it more after you've had your knee torn, it shows that you're training at a great school and you're in great hands.
in some ways, my favorite moment in jiu-jitsu is right now. For me, it's and ironically, I'm over 10 years from when I started. I have a lot to learn still, but I feel like, and this actually will lead into my next question because I'm also curious about this. I've noticed right now when I'm training, something similar has happened to me in that moment when I started becoming more proficient in my professional craft, which is glass fabrication or glass blowing. If you know me, you know that. If you don't, here's some news. So I've always compared glass blowing and jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu, like glass, you reach these peaks and valleys in your training. And at some point you start to sort of like see the matrix. You start to have the beginning stages of connecting the dots on not just a physical level, but also on either, spiritual or even an intellectual level. So I'm starting to not just concentrate on feeling myself move because it's happening naturally, but I'm also beginning to take ownership of those movements. And so, maybe in some ways I'm taking more ownership over my life as I've gained more experiences. But I guess sort of the question is is related to the creativity of jiu-jitsu. And I'd like to know, or if you could relate a story to this or an anecdote. So Brandon, when did you start feeling the ability to be creative in your craft? When did you hone in or start? At what stage did you start to notice these nuances and be able to form poems or stories or some kind of creativity in jiu-jitsu?
Good question. Easy answer. The time period from brown belt to black belt to now, right? My journey through jiu-jitsu from white belt to brown belt was I trained in an association where I had a very famous teacher that traveled around and didn't have an academy. He didn't have a home base. So, my job was to meet him, connect with him, follow him as much as I could, and get to as many seminars as I could. Luckily, there were some brown belts under Hoists that were local in Westchester, and I was able to get mentorship and training with them. But I didn't have an academy and a teacher that was correcting me on a consistent basis. So there were tons of mistakes. I mean, I was technically coaching from the first day I started training because I offered a grappling program at my school that I wasn't allowed to call, Hoist Gracie Jiu-Jitsu until I was a blue belt on the network and ranked. So during that time, we always had students that they trained with us in the classes, and I was always coaching them. But the amount of mistakes that I made and the amount or the amount of times I had to get by on athleticism or just understanding body mechanics from different style of martial arts, I think my journey's always been kind of creating positions that worked for me when they weren't technically right. But then when I got to brown belt and I switched teams, I switched camps, and I started training with Professor Tony Passos, his system of teaching and training created all the body mechanics and the associations to movement and breathing and how to flow and all the drills that we did that that we do in class. That's when I really start to understand things, and I was able to be more creative with my jiu-jitsu when I was able to answer questions without actually having to feel what was going on, being able to see and have a student ask me, how come my S mount, the guy keeps bumping me off, and I could look at them and tell them, their hips need to twist more, put your foot here, your hand, those adjustments I can make now because I understand the mechanics in jiu-jitsu better. Back in the day, I would have to say, get up, let me get in there, and I'd have to twist and pull and fight and struggle and then try and make up some reason why it works this way versus the way they were doing it, where now I understand my body, I understand jiu-jitsu, and does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
All right.
Josh?
That's awesome. I mean, it's incredible, and I it's a great question, and I think that for me, being able to access the creativity in it, it comes and goes, and there are days of which I struggle with it, and I am the nail, and the nail doesn't always mean getting smashed. Sometimes the nail is doing the smashing because you leave kind of beat up. For me, one moment that stands out, I'll tell you a story of which I was able to really kind of feel the power that I have gained from this training. So I was covering for another instructor. So I showed up to their school, a couple of classes, 3 classes in a row. It was great. You love it. You cover for another instructor. You walk into a different school. Everyone's like, ooh, it's a great feeling. And first class went great. Second class, there were a lot of people there. There were teenagers there whose parents had brought them, sitting in the lobby. The place was packed. I mean, this school in particular is notorious for being packed. 40, 50 people, tons of people on the street, tons of people walking in and out.
And which school is this?
This was one of the Brooklyn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools in Bensonhurst on Bay Parkway.
Okay.
And so I'm in the middle of this class. It's going really great. And we get this a lot in Brooklyn. We get foot traffic. Out here, I don't think there's walk-ins.
Yeah, walk-ins.
We call them walk-ins. We got a quote unquote walk-in from a very drugged out, disturbed individual. And like the second he stepped foot in there, I was like,
Spidey senses went off.
I was like, this just got interesting. So sometimes they just kind of poke around a little bit, and they're like, yeah, and then we were like, okay, thank you, we'll call you, you know. But I learned pretty quickly that this wasn't that, and the man, pretty big man, walked onto the mat, shoes on, like he could have like done all kinds of things, but his sneakers on the mat. It was like
that was the trigger.
Like,
set you off.
Nauseous. Yeah. It didn't set me off, but I was like, this is it. Like, yeah, like, okay, you're in the waiting area. Like, I'm now like making my way to that area, trying not to alert the whole class that a situation is happening.
And he steps in the inner circle, right?
Yeah. So he just walks in. Everyone in the class stops. Everyone in the waiting room stops, and they don't look at the man. They look at me. Of course. And I had like a split second to make some decisions. Like it was like the good or the evil. I was like, this is, I mean, it's even better. He's on the mat, quick takedown, do a little demonstration for the class. Maybe it'll even be good for the school. They'll see that it really works. Like all these things are going through my head. Then I was like, well, I kind of see a knife in his pocket, or maybe it's a pen.
Maybe it's a needle.
I was like, no problem. Knife. In my mind, I'm like, instantly, I'm like, all right, knife we can deal with. No problem. Gun, I don't know. And so I tried everything, but like, sir, like, are you interested in classes? Like, just totally like
professional.
Trying to, like,
diffuse.
Have you done jiu-jitsu before? Like, are you interested in this for you or maybe your children? And he was just like belligerent at that point. He turned to one of the women and he was like, I'm gonna marry you. And her face like dropped.
Lord.
And tears are coming. Like she felt and he just kept saying, I'm here for you.
She was scared.
She was scared.
Yeah.
Everyone was scared.
Right.
How
far were you from this guy?
Jabbing. Like 7 feet.
Close enough. Yeah.
Close enough. Because I knew like if I had to physically remove him, I would have liked to have the first shot. Right at the element of surprise. I didn't want to drag it out.
At this point, you guys in the middle of the mat, or
yeah, right in the middle of the mat.
All right.
Almost like he was the uke for the technique that was about to happen, and I feel like a lot of people were expecting that. And in that moment, like I just kind of centered myself, and I realized that like this is an opportunity for a lesson for the staff, for the students, for the parents. If I just start swinging on the guy, or even just jiu-jitsuing him, it might be fun, and on surface level it might appear to be a good thing, but I think ultimately it would not be good. It would not be good for the guy. It would not be good for me. It would not be good for the staff, while it might be exciting. So I started talking to him. I said, man, wait, what high school did you go to? I totally sidetracked him. He's like, what? No, I'm not talking about high school. I think I know you. You don't know me. I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna marry her. And at this point, he's like advancing. He goes, yo, let me try some of this on you. And I was like, no. We're not gonna do that right now. But I have a better idea. You look like the type of person. It is hot out there. He goes, yeah, it's hot. Can I say I got a little towel? He's like drying himself. He's like, yeah, it's hot. I was like, it is hot out there. I was like, you look like the type of person that really likes ice cream. And the whole class was like, what?
Verbal jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, people, in their minds, they were like, take him down, kick his ass. And he goes, yeah, man, I love ice. I was just about to go next door and get some ice cream. Would you like some? He was like, yeah. He was like, vanilla? I was like, we can get vanilla. I was like, we can get vanilla and chocolate. And we both I'm now barefoot. We walked out the door. We walked right next door. I was like, you know what? Here's a couple bucks. Go in there, get some ice cream. And when you get home, share it with everyone at home. He goes, yeah, I'm going to do that. I hung a U-turn, skirted back in the school, locked the door, and the guy just drifted off into his life. And for me, that was more jiu-jitsu than the 3-minute rounds we did for the rest of the night after that. It was just as much control, and the distance was there, and the awareness was there, and the breath control, and the composure, and the appealing to your partner, appealing to the people watching, appealing to the winner, appealing to the street, and really for the guy who was clearly disturbed. He didn't need a beating.
Right.
He needed ice cream.
Yeah.
He was sick and suffering in that moment. And that's when, one of the times of which I was like, wow. Jiu-Jitsu is powerful.
The creativity of handling a situation can be equally as creative as handling an opponent.
Yeah.
And your instincts kicked in ways that you probably did not.
The whole time
plan
I was
for.
sure it was going to pop off until I had made it back into the school, which, by the way, all the students were there by themselves, waiting, like not really knowing what's going on. Until I made it back in and locked that door, it was still in it. It was still in the round. It was just as much of a round as any other rounds I did that night.
Yeah, amazing.
The only reason that played out the way it played out is because of your confidence.
Yeah.
You played through the scenarios in your head. You knew what you could do.
Yeah.
That's the thing about a trained martial artist.
White belt,
like
that wouldn't have
a
happened.
Street fighter.
Purple belt, that would have been his ass.
Right.
Black belt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I had an old teacher tell me that once. He said the difference between a trained martial artist versus like a tough guy street fighter, a guy that gets in fights every weekend, or frequent enough to consider themselves a tough guy, is as a martial artist, we have dozens, if not hundreds of different variations and applications that we can apply in a situation to diffuse force or apply force or redirect force, whatever it is. We have hundreds of tools to deal with it, where that guy may have his right hand, that overhand right he likes to throw, or his little, whatever technique he likes to rush people, or grab him, headbutt him, get in close. We're not afraid of that because we've played it 1,000, 10,000 times. So to you, you're like, I could smash this guy.
Yeah.
Or I could just try and talk him out.
Just get him on his way, and
it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful.
The smashing would have been. I think a lot of people would have been entertained and excited by it. Personally, if it didn't have to, it wouldn't have sat well with me.
You could have freaked some people out too. Some of your students could totally be turned off by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They could see that this guy needed help, and
exactly.
Sensei or professor didn't recognize that. And he just
exactly.
What a bully! I don't want to take this art anymore. I don't want to train with this guy. And then all of a sudden, you go down in history
as
right?
the guy who who was beating up on someone with mental illness in the school.
Yeah. I like this topic of Matt stories. I feel like we could get into an entire podcast of Matt stories. Yeah. Well, I mean.
Biopic.
Well, while we're here, Brandon, do you have any funny Matt stories or interesting Matt stories or anecdotes from the dojo?
The real funny ones come from teaching children.
Some great ones. I have a good jiu-jitsu one. It was we were interviewing for like a program director / instructor. We always put ads out, and you get all these people walking in, and we had this guy come in. He was on his application. His lists of skills and experience, he listed himself as a high-level white belt.
I think we got that resume, too.
Did you get that one, too? High-level white belt. So I'm like, I can't wait to meet this guy. Like, what is a high-level white belt?
I'm pretty sure at some point during that time, somebody asked me what my rank was, and I might have used that term.
Yeah, but coming from you, it just means that you're proud of, like,
I know.
You've
I'm a
earned
jumbo
some stripes,
shrimp.
Yeah, right? This guy was coming in like, and I when he came in for the interview, it was great. He had a huge ego, and he was. I said, hey man, what? So I'm reading your application, and you trained here, you worked there, and blah blah blah. So tell me a little bit about your jiu-jitsu experience. It says you're a high-level white belt. Like, can you qualify that? He goes, oh yeah, man. When I go to schools, I tap purple belts on the regular. I was like, oh, okay, cool, man. Do you compete? He was like, no, not really, but he just kept on with his little attitude. So I was like, oh, this is great, man. This is great. You have sweats on because we always tell people to come in so they can do a little workout. We can run through a little intro and see what their skills are. I said, I happen to have a purple belt on the mat, so how about we get out there and do a couple rounds? You move around a little bit, and you can show me your skills. So this purple belt I have it on the mat happens to be like one of our toughest purple belts at the time, and put him on the mat with this kid, and our purple belt just ran through him, 6 ways from Sunday, tapped him out every which way. And after it was over, I just told the kid, I was like, listen, there are different levels, different schools. I'm not sure where you've trained in the past, but you should find some humility in your ranking, your experience. I would just put white belt down, unless you're a competitor and you have accolades and I won the worlds at white belt and this and that. The other thing, I would kind of keep out the high level white belt and just go with where you are and what you're good at, and really focus on your abilities. And he thanked me and he said he was going to change it. And obviously we didn't hire him, but that's a Matt story. That high level white belt, man.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So
I'm surprised you even let him take it that far.
We were so entertained, and it was like we interviewed 20 people, and it just it just happened. It was a perfect storm. We didn't set it up. We just happened to have one of our guys on the mat. And we finished a morning class, and it was like that.
So one thing that the three of us have in common is that we're all teachers, professors. We've all encountered students that have either blown us away or have completely turned on us, or not turned on us, I should say, or disappointed when you thought someone had a lot of potential. But my next question sort of pertains to the philosophy of teaching, because it's a subject that is important to me. That's something that I think about a lot, is the pedagogy of teaching, the practice of teaching, the way in which we communicate with our students, the way we relate to them. And I think, in jiu-jitsu, in art making, for me specifically, there's when you do spend a half of your lifetime practicing something and you reach a quote unquote mastery, although I don't love using the term mastery because I still feel we always have something to learn. But is there something that, and I'll start with Brandon, is there something that you can describe in your teaching philosophy, in the way in which you engage students, in the way in which you think about how to best inform them, but on a deeper level, on connecting with the individual is something I think about a lot. And there's a lot of different personalities and types of people out there. But as teachers, as owners of Martial Arts Academy, you must have your beliefs, and maybe you can briefly describe some to us.
Like you said, there are so many different personalities on the mat, and depending on the day and the time, you may have more of one type of personality than the other, or a complete, mix. We always have classes that you have, brand new people that just started and people that have been, trained for some time. I feel like I've gotten to a point as a coach and as a teacher, and being able to read the floor, that I can always teach a class or show a concept or do some sort of flow drill or some sort of jujitsu, body mechanic that's going to benefit everybody, no matter what level they're at. And also, I love to have fun in class. I love to laugh. I love to point out, interesting facts. I always tell stories on the mat. I always use interesting analogies. People always, like to joke and laugh, and they're like, "I'm never going to forget that technique because of the analogy that you just gave to me." So, yeah, just being able to also dictate the energy of the class based on my energy has always been something that when I step on the mat and I bow, it's a light switch. No matter what's going on personally, no matter what's going on out on the outside, I bow in, I flip that switch, and it's game time, and I'm happy to be teaching. I love to see new people. I love to see old people. I just get into a mode, man, where I'm able to share and do what I love doing, almost more than anything in life. So you train in class. I don't think you would have stuck around that long if you didn't feel that and experience that.
No, I, as a matter of fact, recognized it right away, and is the reason that I have trained for this long with you, and probably why I was so inspired to train by Josh from the beginning. But yeah, I'd like to also ask Josh the same exact question and get an because I have seen you go from student to teacher. As a friend, as a very close friend, I've seen that transition, and I remember watching that development because I think in many ways you and I were going through it at the same time, as me transitioning from student to teacher in glass and in art. So, thoughts on your teaching philosophy?
That's deep.
Yeah.
I told you to hit me. Hit me deep.
Earlier
don't
today.
Don't ask me about UFC fights or any of that.
Right.
Crap. So I'm glad you asked me this one.
I'm just here to deliver.
Peeling back some layers.
That's right.
Peeling back some layers.
Who cares about YouTube star boxing matches? I think in a lot of instances, but especially in jiu-jitsu, schools are structured like pyramids, which is the picture a pyramid with the point at the top, which is the head of the school is usually the highest ranking, the most famous, the most athletic, the highest level competitor, the star of the school. And it's almost as if the school is structured, and this trickles down into the classroom too. It's almost as if the school is structured, whereas that person is standing on the shoulders of all the students. So the black belt's under them, and then the brown belt's under them, and if you look at it by rank, whereas the tip of the pyramid is the head instructor. I was always taught, and this is something I'm not taking any credit for this. This was taught to me by my instructors, Professor Brian Glick, Professor Shihan Dunn. We like to flip the pyramid. And at the very bottom is the instructor. And at the bottom, the pyramid goes out. The instructor, on his shoulders, on his hands, is trying to hold up and elevate the levels of all the students. And not the other way. And in the classroom, it goes all the way up. So, in fact, while we teach, one of the most important people on the mat in that moment is the newest student.
Is the new person.
Not catering to the most athletic or the highest level or the loudest or the one who requires the most attention. And don't get me wrong, everybody is equally important, and there's work for everybody to do. But as like a principle, that would be one of them. And truth be told, like, very few things make me as happy as working with brand new people and watching that like excitement and watching them grow.
That's interesting because just today when I was speaking to Brandon before we started the podcast, he had this excitement in his voice because we got somebody coming in and somebody coming to train. And every time you mention that, it's fun. I think you get so excited about the potential of sharing this with new people is just as exciting as getting to do it with them, because we've had these discussions that Jiu-Jitsu, very much like class blowing, is not something that people just like to do. It's more challenging physically and mentally, and to be able to just get somebody to walk in, to pick up the phone and call, and that's really where it starts. And I love that philosophy.
Yeah, the classroom itself is like, I look at it as like a almost like creating a painting or a piece of art. Like, everything on the entire canvas is relevant. Even the white space, even the corner, even the little signature on the bottom of somebody's name, everything from the dynamic between partners, who should be together. Maybe there are people that just don't necessarily foster good in each other, and they shouldn't be together in that moment. The pace, the tempo, everything. And for me, it's all about showing people that it is something that they can do. Right? I think that's as instructors, that's what we face. People have to understand, for us to be successful, it's not can they do it, but it's they can do it. Anybody can try it. Anybody could walk in the door, but can you do it? Like, is this something that me, John Random, can actually do with all these giants?
And the answer is, of course you can, but a lot of people don't believe they can.
Right.
And our jobs as coaches is to show them the way, the path that they can become successful. Yeah, man, that's beautiful. You know, whenever I start class, we line everyone up. I always smile. How's everyone feeling? Everyone goes, good, good, good. We always bow, say Jiu-Jitsu. I'm like, all right, guys, let's have a great class. And then at the end of class, when we line up, we bow, we say Jiu-Jitsu, and we do our little walk, and we high-five everybody. And I say to every student, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to class. Thank you for coming to class. Thanks for coming to class. Because without you, I have no purpose.
No. We're standing in an empty room.
Right. Right. No one to share with, no one to play with, no one to train with, no one to help you learn more about yourself, man.
That was the hardest thing for the COVID shutdown for me, is I would go to the school at 6 o'clock on Wednesday when it's full of energy and growth and change and real things happening for people in their lives. And it was silent. There was no break falling. It was just silent. And that's when I got the most rattled, actually. It's not when I was not there, but it was when I was there, and the pictures are on the wall. Like, where is everybody? Like how did we get to this point? And I would leave and I would regain myself and convince myself that the training will be back and it will flourish, because I think by nature good grows. And I think there's a lot of good in the martial arts, and if it's done with some principle of goodness and kindness and of helping others, it will grow. But while I was there in those moments when classes should be going on, tough.
Yeah.
Tough. Could still smell it, but nobody was there.
The darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very scary.
In the beginning, it wasn't mandated that we closed. It was kind of like there was like a week where it was a decision, right? If we would just would have said, you know what, we're staying open, and a week later the government, like everyone would have had to close. But for that 1 week, it was a painstaking decision. Do we stay open and try to do it safe, or do we close down for the health of our city and our students?
Yeah, and with the information that we had at the time, like, you didn't even know what safe really was.
Exactly.
Like, could you be safe?
Exactly.
And if you did do it as safely as possible, and all of a sudden you became a hub for, like, now you're...
Yeah. We wind up closing.
Right. Catch-22, man.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of leads to a really, another question that came up in my mind as you guys were just talking, and I think it's something that we all have on our mind, but basically, like, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe rolling? Do you feel safe training? Do you feel comfortable? What, Josh, maybe I'll start with you, because you have, you're in Brooklyn. We're in
Richfield,
Connecticut.
Yeah, Connecticut.
We not only have we had very different experiences during the pandemic, but we still have different lives, and we're in very different places. So, maybe as sort of like a final to this episode, maybe you can talk about the bridging the new world of COVID and training martial arts, and maybe you can speak on what you think and how we move into the future.
Another deep one.
That's a deep one, man. Dude, this is why I asked you for the questions in advance.
Like I said,
I would have been able to formulate. Off the top of my head, like, do I feel safe all the time? To be honest with you, no. And I think, for me personally, that's a tiny little bit of the attraction. I don't even really know how to define safe, right? To be totally, it's my understanding that to be totally safe, you're locked in your house, in a mask, in your house, and you get your groceries and you wash them, and like, the downside to that is mentally and emotionally, and I don't really think there is such thing as safe. Do I feel comfortable doing it? Yes. Why? I think it's part of the fabric of who I am. But do I guarantee safety for people during this transitional time? No, I don't actually, and I can't, and I wouldn't. I think we take measures. I think just like jiu-jitsu, we focus on high percentage techniques, right? There are millions of techniques. I was always taught to put the investment in the higher percentage ones. So what is a higher percentage technique? Making everyone wash their hands before class. It's using hand sanitizer. All the measures, right? Having people train with us, not school hopping. Even within our own organization, it's not happening right now. It's you're taking measures, but guaranteed safety, that's not going to come from me. I can't. I wouldn't. And I for my own safety, personally, deep down, do I feel safe? Like I said, not always, but I also have I don't know if I'd feel safe not doing it.
Yep. How about you, Brandon? You got a new school. You got old
Hell of a time to
students.
open a new school.
New students. Although I have to say things are going great.
I have friends that have also opened up new jiu-jitsu schools this time, and I applaud.
There's no time like the present.
No time. Yeah.
So,
it's actually a great time.
Your thoughts?
Do I feel safe?
Well,
do I feel comfortable?
Correct.
I feel comfortable. Do I feel safe? Inherently, I do feel safe because I don't think negatively. I try to keep that. I don't try and keep it out. It just doesn't enter my mind. I've taken precautions, in terms of being vaccinated, and I try to live a healthy lifestyle, and I take my vitamin D, and I do all the things that I think I should be doing. I kind of would throw training right now in jiu-jitsu to like maybe how someone feels that would skydive or ride a motorcycle. If you're afraid that your parachute won't open and you're afraid of heights, then you probably shouldn't jump out of a plane. If you are afraid of going down on a motorcycle, because I used to ride a bike, and people would always use that little silly cliche. There's only two type of riders: ones that have gone down and ones that are going down, type of thing. And I don't think that way. I don't think that every time I get on my bike, that's going to be my last time riding. I'm having an accident. I don't feel that way about jiu-jitsu. I feel like leadership starts at the top. The way that we've built our culture and the type of people that we have in class, I believe the majority of them live a pretty healthy and safe lifestyle and don't try and expose themselves. Like one of our blue belts, was supposed to come in yesterday for class, and he texted me. He said, "I don't feel great, so I'm going to stay home. Thank you for letting me know." And that's what we're going to do. That's all we can do right now. I just don't think that way, Moshe.
Yeah.
Really
Calculated risk, I think, is sort of kind of sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of calculated risk in everything we do, even in jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
You want to.
It's a contact sport, man.
Right.
You can get injured at any point in time. Like, I'm sure we all have.
The question you ask: are you safer not doing it?
Right. I think that's a great rebuttal to my question. Is I think we're all better off.
Just what I've been telling people is, especially new people that have been inquiring, and they everyone's been asking, what's your protocol? What do you do? Well, we wear masks. We have the hand sanitizers around the school. And I just tell them, listen, if you don't feel comfortable right now, then you really should do it. You shouldn't do it. You should wait. Wait till you feel comfortable, because everyone that's on the mat feels comfortable. I feel comfortable. If it's something that you're losing sleep over, you really shouldn't start training now.
Yeah,
I think we'll be here.
I think that's very important, is that you're going to get the best results with the most positive mindset. And if you have something in the way or negating that progress, perhaps it's best to work those issues out and then step on the mat with your, best intentions.
Sure.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys so much from deep within my soul for giving me the opportunity to learn this craft, something that I love doing so much, that has always been important to me, and even more so to the both of you. And I think this was, super, for me, selfishly, really exciting. And I hope that the people that get to listen to it hear the love in your voices for what you do and what you spend, all your time focusing on. So, Josh, thank you so much. If you have any last things that you want to tell people, that this would be the time. I'll also, as keeping in form, ask Brandon the same thing.
No, thanks for having me. This was awesome. I love being at the ground floor of big things. Like I said, I was in the first group of students at my Jiu-Jitsu academy. I feel like I'm within the first couple guests of this awesome podcast. So thanks for
actually
having
our
me.
first guest.
First guest.
Yeah,
Oh my
Corecast
goodness.
podcast, man.
You can't go any more ground floor.
Yeah,
than
and
that.
you'll be on the mat with us for the first time
we're training
tonight.
Train
which
tonight.
is awesome.
Yep, very
I can't
excited
wait.
for that.
Me too.
And yeah,
Just don't beat up the old man.
just try and survive every day.
Gentle art.
Brandon,
The gentle art. Yeah. No, listen, I was looking so forward to this podcast just so I could actually meet Josh and,
Yeah.
just share the energy with such a positive influence on such a great friend of mine, Moshe. Man, I know thousands of people. I've met thousands of people throughout my years of training, and I have a select few that I spend time with on a regular basis. I speak to on a regular basis. I give energy to on a regular basis, and Moshe is one of them.
Yeah.
Hi.
He's the real
Likewise.
one.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You said something to me.
It's
the
all
other day.
mutual.
Like, you're like, I don't let people in and this and that until I feel comfortable. And I'm the same way, man. Like, I don't really have a lot of time for things that aren't really in line with my goals, man. My goals right now are to rebuild my Jiu-Jitsu academy to something bigger and better than it was before.
It's happening.
Yeah, thank you, man. And have these experiences. This podcast has been so positive for me. And just the time spent, and I can't wait till tonight, bro. You know how I think about class.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I put together, great workouts for what we're doing. I love how things tie together, and then it's gonna be awesome, and it's gonna be an absolute honor to have Josh on the mat.
So,
Honor is mine. Yeah.
well, with that, this has been the second episode of the Core Academy podcast with Moshe Berserker and Brandon Durham, featuring Josh Skyer. Thank you, guys.
Us. You just experienced the Core Academy podcast. Feel the flow. Jiu-Jitsu for life. Us.